welcome to WrestleMania.
How's it going, everybody? This is the Nitty Gritty. My name is Chad. With me is Leonard. This is a show about wrestling, and this week we decided to continue our WrestleMania-themed episodes, and we haven't done a rebook of WrestleMania yet, during this run anyway. So we decided to rebook WrestleMania 10. Now, you might be saying, why are we rebooking that one? There's at least 2 classic matches on there. Does it really need to be rebooked? Well, there were more than just 2 matches on that card, but we gave ourselves some ground rules to make things more interesting. And Leonard, do you want to tell them what those ground rules are?
Sure. Now, to mention, this came up because when we did our greatest opening matches in WrestleMania history, we both had Bret Hart versus Owen Hart from this show at number 1. And at the time, we both said, yeah, outside of that match and the IC title ladder match between Shawn Michaels and Razor Ramon, there's not a lot of really good stuff on this show. So that's why we decided to do it. And of course, we both would have kept the matches that I just mentioned unless we couldn't. So here was the 2 specifications that we threw in. 1, you could have Bret Hart versus Owen Hart, or you could have Bret win the title from Yokozuna, but you couldn't have both, one or the other. And I guess neither, even though I don't think we said that. And I assume both of us used one or the other. And then the other one was you had to book a ladder match, but it could not be Michaels versus Ramon. You could use one of them or neither, but not both. So that's the 2 things that we laid the ground rules on. So we wouldn't automatically keep those 2 classics, but a chance that we could have something close to those while reworking the entire card. So I'll throw it back to Chad because I assume you'll run down what the card actually was. And some of you out there might be surprised at the hot garbage that the rest of the show was.
Exactly. And so let's go over a little bit of background information about WrestleMania 10, which was obviously the 10th annual WrestleMania event. It was held in Madison Square Garden on March 20th, 1994. And it had a tagline called 10 Years in the Making. It was the first WrestleMania edition not to include Hulk Hogan.
And Tito Santana.
That's true, yeah. Who had previously been seen as the face of the company. This would also mark Randy Savage's last televised match for the company. It had an attendance of 18,065, a buy rate of 420,000. And let's go over that hot garbage card. The dark match was the heavenly bodies of Tom Pritchard and Jimmy Del Rey, with Jim Cornette defeating the Bushwhackers. The opening match, as we've discussed, is Owen Hart against Bret Hart. After that was Bam Bam Bigelow and Luna Vashon against Doink the Clown and Dink the Clown. After that, we had Randy Savage against Crush in a Falls Count Anywhere match, followed by Alundra Blaze and Leilani Kai in a singles match for the WWF Women's Championship. After that, we had Men on a Mission of Mabel and Mo with Oscar defeating the Quebecers with Johnny Polo by countout for the WWF Tag Team Championship. Yokozuna defeated Lex Luger by DQ in a singles match for the WWF Championship with Mr. Perfect as the special guest referee. We then had Earthquake against Adam Bomb with Harvey Whippleman. And the ladder match for the undisputed WWF Intercontinental Championship, Razor Ramon and Shawn Michaels with Diesel. And the last match, Bret Hart against Yokozuna with Mr. Fuji and Jim Cornette for the WWF Championship with Roddy Piper as the special referee. So Leonard and I have concocted our cards, and I will say right off the bat, I did not have a dark match here, but being that it was WrestleMania 10, I did have 10 matches.
Well, I have 10 matches, including a dark match. My dark match makes 10.
Well, then, you know what? Without further ado, why don't you kick us off with the dark match?
Okay, so my dark match is going to be the Head Shrinkers of Fat 2 and Samu versus the Smoking Guns of Bart and Billy Gunn. Now, they were supposed to be involved in an 8-man tag against each other that got cut from the show. Supposedly, The story is the ladder match ran long, that Shawn and Razor were getting the signal to wrap it up and just kept going anyway.
Right.
WWE, their tag division, I'm going to say, was interesting at this time. They had serviceable teams. I would
That's
say
a nice way of putting it.
And these are two of them. I think that it would be a good match. I know these teams had matches before. Basically, I kind of wanted something to let the crowd know, hey, sit down. Things are going to start. I think this would be just a decent match between two pretty good tag teams to get the crowd woke up and moving here.
All right. I like it. Well, I will start with my opening match then, which will give away which of these stipulations or specifications I leaned on. Mm-hmm. And that would be, I kept Bret versus Owen as the opening match. It was our number one WrestleMania opener, and I didn't see the need to change it because the match is perfect the way it is, number one. Number two, I also think that the Bret Owen storyline was more interesting than the Bret Yokozuna storyline. And I'll get to why as my card goes on, but I felt that this didn't need to be changed in any way. So that's what I kept. I don't really need to elaborate on the match. We've already gone over it in detail on another show. But yeah, I mean, this was a great storyline. I don't know if I would have kept the finish the same, being that Bret wasn't going to win later in the night, which was the arc going on the event. Maybe I would have Bret go over here, maybe not. I'm not really sure. You know, it could just lead to more matches if Owen won and kept it the same way. But yeah, so that's my opener.
Okay. I also kept it. You know, I figured both of us would. It's kind of, even saying, hey, we're going to rebook the show, to take that out of it seems like a crime. So to leave it exactly where it is as the opener, and I would keep the finish the same. I don't think that hurts Bret any while helping to elevate Owen. I think that's fine. The only other thing I would mention here is that if you wanted to move the world title back to Bret, you can do that King of the Ring, which is right around the corner with that. And there were, to me, plenty of other options that you could do with Yokozuna for the world title. And I forgot to mention, in my dark match, I probably would have the Smoking Guns go over as the faces, again, to kind of make the crowd happy heading into the show. But yeah, as we said, there's not much more we need to say here. So I'll let you do your number two match. Now, if we match from here on out, I'll be surprised.
Yeah, I would be too. Because I did try some interesting things. So, and we didn't even go over our cheat, which I don't know if you had a cheat. I have at some point.
I don't believe I have a cheat. I think everybody I have was physically at the show.
Okay. Well, my number two match is Alundra Blaze versus Luna Vashon for the WWF Women's Championship. I didn't get a chance, I'll be perfectly honest, to look up, you know, if these two had a match. They might have. I know that they didn't have a long-standing feud at this time that I can recall, because Alundra Blaze was working with primarily talent from Japan. But Luna was there. She was young and hungry, and Medusa, Alundra Blaze, was also, you know, raring to go, as she only worked like a few times a year. And I think that this didn't have to be any longer than the match that was on there with Leilani Kai, which I think was like 3 minutes, 20 seconds. This could have been around 5 minutes. And I think that these two could have gotten in enough work to really push the women's championship. Like, if you're going to do it, then have it with, you know, two pieces of talent that the crowd will recognize and are invested in. Give these two a storyline instead of just throwing them together. And I think that it could have worked. I mean, Luna was the consummate heel. So I think that this could have been a good second matchup following a technical classic.
You know, I didn't book a women's match because I forgot.
That's all right.
I was thinking about it because the title was on the line. I was going to look to Japan to bring in someone. But yeah, using Luna makes total sense. She was there. People knew who she was, as you said. And I think she's better than a lot of people give her credit for, because especially around this time, she was involved with the Doink Dink feud with Bigelow, and I don't think she was given a lot of opportunities, and no woman at this period was being given a lot of opportunities on a major stage. But I think that's a perfectly serviceable match for the second one out. And again, I don't know if they had worked together. I would guess that they did, but as you said, not very high profile. So
Right.
fine choice. Next, going kind of off the rails here. Now, a Falls Count Anywhere match was part of the original show. We didn't say we had to keep that, but I said, why not? Let's use it. So I've got a Falls Count Anywhere match, Razor Ramon versus Big Daddy Cool Diesel.
Interesting.
So here's my story. I would have had a unification of the Intercontinental title belts between Razor Ramon and Shawn Michaels on a Raw heading into this. And I would have Diesel attack Ramon to help Michaels win. And there's going to be a little bit more with that later on. So over the next few weeks, I would have Ramon and Diesel just attacking each other, fighting in the back, fighting on the aisle, fighting everywhere, which would lead to a Falls Count Anywhere match. Now, Ramon and Diesel has had matches. They float around each other at this time, before and after. I mean, they've been connected throughout, but to have a match against each other at a WrestleMania with a stipulation like this, something very, very high profile, I think would be good. And like you said, you want to book something that was a little bit different than Technical Classic that opened. Again, this is a Falls Count Anywhere match against two, big, very much character, quote unquote, guys at this time. And I think that's very much a gear shifter. And this could be a match stealer as well, show stealer, I should say, a match of the night show stealer as well, I think, between these guys at this time.
Yeah, I like that. I had thought about using Diesel in a match. He was still very early in the company at this point, but I couldn't figure out a way to use him that I liked. Although I did think about that in one of our previous rebooks, I did book Diesel against Razor Ramon for the WWF Championship, but that would have been, a little bit down the road still. But I like that. Especially a Falls Count Anywhere match. I think that those guys would have worked that match really, really well. So my number 3 match is for the WWF Tag Team Championship, the Quebecers versus the Steiner brothers. So the Steiners are not long for this world after WrestleMania 10. I believe it's in May or so that they start to phase out, but they're here, and why not use them? Let's put them in a prominent spot. I don't know that I would give them the win here. Maybe I would, and then have the Quebecers, steal one on the next event or something like that. But it's the Steiners. They can work with pretty much anybody. The Quebecers had their moments. Gimmick aside, I think that these 4 guys could work either a physical match or a match with, some technical wrestling, a little bit of mixture. And maybe I'd have the Steiner brothers just go over just to give them a moment in the WWF. Like, they didn't have any moments in their run here. Like, I had some good matches, but it would have been cool to see them have a moment in the sun. So,
well, the Steiner brothers lost the belts to the Quebecers, so this would have been
a follow-up.
A rematch. And I looked it up because I used that match as well. Now, it's not my next match. We'll get to it where I have it. But I'll talk about it now since you booked it, and then we'll gloss over it when I get to it on my card. But I actually made it a loser leaves town match, or more the Steiners.
I like that.
On the line, since they knew the Steiners were out the door anyway.
Yeah.
This is a way to put the Quebecers over absolutely huge. They would look like monsters if they sent the Steiners packing. So I'm of the mind that if they're leaving anyway, job them out, get quality, get value off of it, and not make them look bad, of course.
Right.
Let them have a good match, but do something where they're really trying to elevate the Quebecers on their way out the door. So when we get to that. So since it was a title match, I had that a little higher on my card. I'll mention that when we get there. But my number 3 match was Mr. Perfect Kurt Hennig versus Rick Martel. So Hennig was here and was a special guest referee. So from what I looked up, he was supposed to work a program with Lex Luger coming out of this, but his back flared up again. He was out again for a few more months. But I would take it he was cleared to wrestle at this moment, so he was eligible to work a match. Rick Martel was going to be in that 8-man that didn't happen that I mentioned. These are 2 former AWA champions. I guarantee you they wouldn't mention that in commentary, even though that would be a great mix and match. And I should have looked up if those guys had crossed paths in the AWA. I believe they have had some matches, but again, never had something high profile, nothing on pay-per-view, nothing on a WrestleMania. And again, it's shifting gears back to something that would be just a good, solid, classical match. I don't think you need much of a storyline here. It could be simply just having Hennig and Martel cut some promos on each other back and forth leading into this. It could be something where maybe Hennig announces that he's ready to wrestle and come back, and Martel interrupts him just because he wants the spotlight. Who cares about Hennig? Something of that nature. It wouldn't have to be, I think, a great storyline, because the match itself on paper would be very good.
Yeah, I like that idea a lot. I really wanted to use Rick Martel somehow. I couldn't figure out a way to use him where I like. See, I was trying to figure in this card, I was trying to use logic where I could, and I couldn't figure out a way to use Rick Martel the way I liked, but I had like various scenarios for Mr. Perfect. And I mentioned that because you just mentioned the Martel Mr. Perfect AWA connection. And one of the ideas that I had, I didn't use this, but I really wanted to, is I was going to have Razor Ramon and Mr. Perfect in a match, because in a perfect world, they would mention that those two guys were tag team partners and that they had a history, and you could create a really badass feud out of that if you wanted to. The fact that these guys used to be friends and partners, now they're here and they have this feud. Anyway, I didn't use that, but I wanted to mention it. And I mention all that now because my next match, I did keep the Falls Count Anywhere stipulation. Only in this case, I used Mr. Perfect versus Lex Luger.
Ooh, that's nice.
So here's my logic with that.
First of all, let me say that's a rematch from WrestleMania 9.
That's what I was going to say. And that's why I kept the stipulation there. Because in the storyline, as Leonard mentioned, Mr. Perfect was supposed to go into a feud with Lex Luger, kind of disputing the way the refereeing went when Lex Luger had the match against Yokozuna. In my universe, Bret and Luger could still have gone out of the Rumble the same time, but in my universe, they both had their matches already with Yokozuna, and they didn't win. So you could keep the Lex Luger Mr. Perfect feud based on all that. Only in this case, Lex Luger is no longer the narcissist. He's just Lex Luger, and it's Mr. Perfect coming back. I used the same logic you did, that he would have been healthy enough. I looked up all that history as well. But because it's a rematch from WrestleMania 9, make it a Falls Count Anywhere, up the ante, and kind of reference that history. And I think it could have been really interesting if that feud was continued a year later. So, yeah, and I would have, I certainly would have had Mr. Perfect go over. But.
Yeah, and I like the idea that that's a Falls Count Anywhere match with the two of them. Perfect can do anything. And, of course, Luger, you need to protect him, showcase him in certain ways. And I think something like this that would be very brawly and wide-ranging, I think would work for him. And I like the fact that this is a dynamic flipped from the previous year, where the face is a heel, the heel is a face, and you're drawing on the previous WrestleMania. All that's great. I think this would probably be a good match for Luger, believe it or not. I think, and it could do it. So match number 4 for me is Jeff Jarrett versus Bob Backlund. Now, these guys fought here and there in 1995 from what I was finding, but the characters are a little bit different here than what they were doing in 95. See, one of the ideas I had was, being this is WrestleMania 10, I wanted to play a little bit with WWF history and WrestleMania history and bring in some history stuff. So Backlund was kind of, at this period when he first returned, was like an underdog. He was sort of a forgotten champion. He was in his early 40s trying to prove he still could. And Jeff Jarrett was young, cocky, brash. So, of course, he wants to make a name for himself by going over a former WWF World Heavyweight Champion in Bob Backlund. And while their styles are a bit different and the personalities are different at this point, I think they could mesh and put on a really good bout here. So this would be all about Backlund proving he can still go and finally have his WrestleMania moment. And as much as I would like to put Backlund over here, I think it probably makes more sense for Jarrett to win because Jarrett was getting the push. Jarrett was the younger talent than Backlund. But I think you could definitely have a match where the crowd would be really behind Backlund, really pop for Backlund, really think he's going to get the win here and there with some near falls, and make this kind of a hidden gem of a match. I think so. This really, I came up with this because I wanted to do some history things and looking at people who had a long history. It didn't go further back than Backlund at that time.
Yeah, I like that. And, I used these guys in different ways, but I think that they definitely could have had a good match, and it would have been cool to see Bob Backlund have some sort of WrestleMania moment. I agree, though, that Jarrett probably should be the one to go over in that scenario. But yeah, I'm with you on the history part of it, because I try to incorporate a little bit of that too. We'll get there. My next match is a tag team match. I have Razor Ramon and the 1-2-3 Kid versus Jeff Jarrett and Jerry Lawler, or as I call them, the Tenacious Tennesseans. That's my tag team name, Leonard.
Not the Memphis Maniacs.
I like that too. That's probably what they would have been named had Vince chosen in that era. Obviously Razor Ramon and 1-2-3 Kid would have stuff together down the road. I moved it up a little bit here, but I think that this foursome of guys could really have had a fun but also quality tag team matchup. I've heard Lawler on commentary mention the Tennessee connection with Jarrett many times, so I think it would have been cool to see them tag together as heels. I can only imagine the promos back and forth, with all these guys. I think it could have been a fun feud had that actually happened. So,
I never would have thought that in a million years. I thought of trying to use 1-2-3 Kid somehow. I did think of using the Ramon team. I didn't think about using Lawler. I just didn't want to use him. I didn't really like what he was doing at this period, so I didn't want to use him. But the connection with them, the connection with Ramon and Kid, and you've got kind of a veteran younger guy with a veteran and a younger guy. Yeah. Like you said, the promos back and forth would be good. Making that Memphis connection with them. I think that would be a pretty good tag match overall. Did you say who you would win? Who would you put over?
Oh, no, I didn't. But I would probably have Ramon and the 1-2-3 Kid win.
That's why I thought. I think there's more upside to the two of them as opposed to Jarrett and Lawler. I think if you would kind of map out the hierarchy, Ramon's and 1-2-3 Kid put together is above Jarrett and Lawler put together. Yeah. Giving them the push. Well, my next match was the tag title match, which we already talked about, the Quebecers and the Steiner brothers. As I said, I just wanted a little bit higher on the card because it was for the title. And I'll throw it back to you.
Yeah. Okay. Well, my next match is actually not a match. It's actually a segment. But it is my number 6 marked part of the show. And that would be a Piper's Pit. And referencing the history, you're going to have to roll with me here, Leonard.
Okay, I'll roll.
I would have a Piper's Pit. It's the 10th anniversary of WrestleMania with Bob Backlund and Hulk Hogan. So
how are you getting Hogan?
Hogan didn't sign officially with WCW until June. So I looked this up. I
didn't even think about it.
He had started, I think, appearing on WCW television before then.
Yes, he was, I believe, doing Thunder in Paradise. He was working for TNT at the time.
Right. Yes, he was. He was filming that show. And initially, I was going to have a match. I was like, well, wouldn't it be cool? 10th anniversary, Piper versus Hogan. But I was like, you know what? No, that's a little bit too much of a stretch for Hogan in this era. But I do think they could have given him a good enough payday to make a Piper's Pit appearance for the 10th anniversary. Be like, hey, we know you've moved on, but could you just make an appearance for the 10th anniversary show? It would mean a lot to the fans. I think that that's feasible in some semblance, in some multiverse reality. And, you could do whatever you wanted here. You could, have him, exchange harsh words with Piper. You could have Backlund come out and, there's the match you never saw in WWF. However, those two did wrestle for 20 minutes, mind you, in Japan. Don't know if anybody knew that, but
I didn't know that.
Yeah, so you could have different things going on here. You have the history. It's the 10th anniversary, and you have all these guys here. I think that this would have been a fun segment to see. A stretch, obviously, because Hogan was looking at WCW at this time, but oh well.
See, what you could do is you could have Piper say, we have the last champ of the pre-WrestleMania era. We have the first champ of the pre-WrestleMania era. And we have the guy that should have been champion
right.
of the WrestleMania era.
You could do so much with it.
Or the greatest wrestler of all eras. Whatever you want. Yeah, and you could have a little scuffle between them. I don't know. Yes, you're right. I never would have thought that, but that's a lot of great stuff that you could do and have if we look like at the WrestleMania we just passed 38, like the idea of a segment leading to a match. They wouldn't have done that back then.
Right. Yeah.
A segment where you maybe had a shot, a pop of some sort could do that.
Yeah.
So my next match is The Undertaker with Paul Bearer versus Bam Bam Bigelow with Luna Vashon. So here's my scenario. Bigelow and Vashon were still supposed to face Doink and Dink as original. But they jumped them in the back earlier in the night, beat the crap out of them. They can't wrestle. So Bigelow gets in the ring, demands an opponent if there's anyone with guts to face him. Lights go out, gong sounds, Undertaker returns. He has not been seen since he, quote unquote, died at the Royal Rumble. Now, of course, this would erase the Undertaker versus Undertaker match from SummerSlam and that whole storyline. Oh, so sorry.
Yeah, right.
We're losing a classic there. But Bam Bam is a big guy who can move. So could Undertaker at this time. I think I looked it up and they had like one match at one point around this period. Maybe it was like, I think 92. But this would probably be a pretty good match. I would have Undertaker win to come back strong, keep the streak going that we didn't really realize was a thing at this point.
How would he have won?
How would he have won? I think he could hit the tombstone on Bam Bam.
That is a visual I would have loved to have seen.
I think he could get him on. Now, I don't think he was doing a choke slam at this time. Well, it would be a low altitude choke slam if he did it on,
yeah.
on Bam Bam. But yeah, he could probably do it. I'd like to see it, especially if Bigelow goes up for him. That could work. So maybe this is bringing Undertaker back too quick. At this point, you need your stars. Bring them back. Get them moving. Give him a big win. Give him another notch on the WrestleMania belt.
So it's interesting you use The Undertaker in a match. Now, I had thought about that. I looked up the history, and he was gone at this time. He was nursing a back injury. So as much as I fudged and tried to cheat here and there on my card, for whatever reason, with Perfect, I wanted to be logical. And with The Undertaker, I wanted to be logical. So I did use The Undertaker, but I didn't use him in a match. But yes, I agree that would have been a great match to see. I think that those are two logical people to put together, or a logical person to put with The Undertaker, I should say. Bam Bam at this time could move, really well. And I can you imagine the hijinks with, at least on your card, with Luna and Paul Bearer on the outside?
I think Luna would definitely go after Bearer, and I think Bearer would probably run away screaming. I think Luna would try to get the urn.
Absolutely. But yeah, I think that could have been a good match. I'm having trouble picturing Undertaker getting Bam Bam up at a tombstone, but certainly Bam Bam could get himself around for it. But whether or not the Undertaker could hold that and not kill him,
I'm trying to think of something because he wasn't doing the Hell's Gate at this time.
No,
maybe just use the flying forearm.
Yeah,
or the flying chop arm thing that he does.
Old school.
The old maybe
at this point it was current school. So
current school current school never ended a match. This could be the
true. Absolutely. Well, I like that. My next match, for whatever reason, I wanted to keep using Crush, but I don't have him against Savage here. Okay. I have Crush versus the Great Muda. So
that's a cheat right there.
Obviously, but he was with NJ New Japan Pro Wrestling at this time. He was not with WCW at this
Yep.
particular moment. He was actually in main event matches with New Japan Pro Wrestling. He didn't have the heavyweight belt there at this moment. I think he just lost it from what I recall looking up. But that's where he was. And I think it's feasible, realistic to imagine them reaching out for something like this. They had done it before. So I think the fact that you have two guys with makeup, Crush had the heel makeup at this point. I think it would have been cool to see Crush go against somebody like this. And if you're going to push Crush as this heel character, what better way to do it than have him go over a legend like the Great Muda instead of getting beat and, having to keep changing his character all the time. So I would have had Crush go over here. I think it would have worked.
That is a neat idea. I wouldn't have thought to bring in Muda. I'm trying to think how those styles would go together.
It would have been weird. It might have been a clash of styles, but
Muda could have worked around them.
Yeah.
Now Crush is being managed by Mr. Fuji and Jim Cornette at the time, and they were kind of trying to play up a little bit on his Polynesian or it was Asian Rim connection.
Oh yeah,
so that could be something that they could have.
Very true.
Played up on the fact that he was from Hawaii and Japan's on that side of the world, and I just had a horrible thought about working in Pearl Harbor. Not a good, but Vince would have done it. If someone would have mentioned it to him, they would have figured it out. So I used Crush as well. I call this a match of convenience because I felt like I had to use Lex Luger and Crush. And I know I booked them before when we rebooked. I believe it was Royal Rumble 95. So I've got Luger versus Crush with Mr. Fuji and Jim Cornette.
I thought about doing this match. I thought about this being my Falls Count Anywhere match at one point.
Yeah, I thought about that too. I thought about giving a stipulation, but I think my juice here would be that I would have had Crush eliminate Luger at the Royal Rumble. That makes him mad. This would make Luger more aggressive. This would lead to him teasing a heel turn. He was a way better heel than a face. And I would keep this short. I would keep it basic. I would let Luger win, but not too clean. Maybe he gets an eye gouge, or maybe he pulls the tight, something like that. I would have Cornette bitch about that, and then Luger nails him with the steel-plated forearm. So Luger had reached the end of his usefulness as a face, even though he would continue on as a face for, I believe, the remainder of his WWF career. So I would had teased a heel turn and probably would have had him heel by SummerSlam. And, where that would have led, hard to say. I would have to look further down the road. But I would definitely have gotten the narcissist back in the game.
I like the idea of him going back to being the narcissist because I think there was mileage there that they could have gone with.
Yeah, if you think about it, he was only the narcissist for a few months.
Yeah.
He debuted at the Rumble, but didn't wrestle for the first couple of months, I don't think. And then there was, he disappeared for maybe a week or two before they did the thing on the flagship. And
right.
So, yeah.
No, I like that. Like I said, I was thinking about doing that match myself. And then I tried other scenarios, but I think that those guys definitely could have had a physical match. Would it have been 5 stars? Maybe not, but I like your match of convenience tagline with it. So my next match is a tag match. It's for the SMW tag team titles, Leonard.
Oh,
it is the Rock and Roll Express versus the Head Shrinkers. I don't know what this match would have looked like, but I feel like the Head Shrinkers and the Rock and Roll Express, both these teams really could work with anybody. And I think it would have been cool to see these teams together. And I think it would also have been cool to see the Rock and Roll Express on a WrestleMania card. And they were with the company at this time. So This is not a cheat. They were there. But, you would have the company do stuff with the Smoky Mountain Wrestling tag team titles before this. And why not do it here? The Rock and Roll Express, that's a name that people will recognize. Even if it's people up north who aren't as familiar with them, they'll know about the Rock and Roll Express to some degree. And the Head Shrinkers were, classic heels of the era. So you could have the Rock and Roll Express do their type of tag match The crowd would have been, good to go for it. And I probably would have just had the Rock and Rolls go over, but I think it would have been a fun match.
I thought about using the Rock and Roll briefly. I thought about possibly using them in the Heavenly Bodies in my dark match. And possibly for the SMW titles. As you said, they had worked together. They had defended the titles in WWE. That's fine. I don't think there would be anything against that. I like the idea of them against the head shrinkers. I think the Rock and Roll Express usually went against two types of teams. Either teams that are very similar to them in makeup, like say the Midnight Express, or sometimes teams that were big brawly type of guys. So I think the head shrinkers have that. I definitely think they could have got a good match out of the head shrinkers. I think this would be a good match. I would assume, I don't know if you said, I would assume that you would keep the belts on the Rock and Roll.
Yeah.
Yes.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So yeah, and I know it's always been said, because I listen to Jim Cornette's podcast, is that like guys like Vince McMahon and Kevin Dunn think that WWF fans only know WWF wrestlers.
Right.
And anytime they would bring in somebody, like I know he tells a story about Terry Funk, that nobody knows who the hell Terry Funk is. And I believe it was the Chainsaw Charlie gimmick.
Right.
And he comes out and everyone chants Terry Funk when Kevin Dunn was like, nobody knows who Terry Funk is.
And you see, it's like, it's looking at things in a very black and white way. And, I at this stage of my life, I only watched the WWF. But I knew who the Rock and Roll Express were.
Right. Yeah. I think
I didn't watch their matches all the time. I couldn't have told you about the classic feuds that they had, but I knew who they were. But yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, I think this is a good match. I think they would have got pop even in MSG, so it's fine. So my next bout is the ladder match that we were required to book. It is still for the WWF Intercontinental title. It still features Shawn Michaels. And his opponent is Macho Man Randy Savage. And are you laughing because is that what you did?
It is. It is.
All right.
Yeah.
So here's my scenario. During the IC title unification match on Raw, which I mentioned earlier, Savage is on commentary. A frustrated Michael exits the ring, gets near the commentary table, maybe yells at Savage for talking crap on him. They get into it. Maybe they shove each other. And that distraction allows Diesel to attack Ramon, so Shawn wins. So then Macho Man inserts himself. He wants that title shot. Again, we're talking history. He had a legendary match with Ricky Steamboat at WrestleMania 3. So he brings in that history. He brings in the fact that he's, won titles at WrestleMania. He's lost titles at WrestleMania. He's defended titles at WrestleMania. You name it, he's done it. He's the Macho Man. And you could simply have had these two maybe get into a fight. Maybe Shawn pulls the ladder from underneath the ring. Whatever. It would be very easy to introduce the ladder match idea. I think having Savage in a ladder match, I don't know if he ever did one in WCW. Nothing comes to mind. But to have him in the first ladder match, and again, history, torch passing, old era, new era, I think it would have been a great bout. I think Savage could still go at this time. I think he and Shawn would definitely have came up with very interesting, if not similar, things to do with the ladder segments, with the ladder that Ramon and Michaels did. Savage hitting the elbow off the ladder. I mean, that's an image right there. And
Absolutely.
I wouldn't put the belt on Savage. I would keep it on Michaels. This is a moment where Savage can really put over Michaels, make Michaels. So I would have him kind of hit the elbow, and that slows him up. This allows Michaels to maybe come back. Michaels would get the win and keep the belt and put him over. But I think this match would still be close to a 5-star classic, if not a 5-star classic, and a great way for Macho Man. As you mentioned, this show was his last on-air match for the WWF. So if this was the way he was going to go out, I think it's a great way for him to go out.
Yeah, I pretty much echo a lot of the logic that you used. And I was trying to figure out a way to keep the match as much of a classic as it could be while changing one of the opponents. And Savage would be the perfect one. And I agree. I think their feud could have been surrounding, who was the best Intercontinental champion, or something along those lines.
Yeah.
You could have incorporated the history there really well. And you know what? As you were talking, and as I thought about how it was his last televised match, you could have even incorporated that. Now, Savage was also already in a career-ending match in WrestleMania 7, but you could have incorporated that as a stipulation here if he didn't win. So it could have been a big send-off for him. Now, he didn't get a big send-off, and rumors are still going as to why that is. But I think it would have been cool to see if you could rewrite history. And these two, I think that you can find either on. So there's like a set with Randy Savage, like lost matches. And then there's a set of Michaels lost matches out there. I think on one of them, you can find that these two did work together like once randomly.
Yeah, I think it was maybe that like the Wrestle War tour.
Yeah, like
type of thing.
But they never had a feud, and
never a feud. And I don't think that match that you mentioned was ever televised. It might have been on a Coliseum tape, something like that.
Exactly right. So yeah, I mean, it would have been cool to see them work more together because Shawn was constantly improving, and this was obviously him really showcasing his brilliance. And Savage could still go. And when you mentioned about him doing a ladder match, I don't think he's ever done a ladder match in WCW, but we did see in WCW him do a little bit of the hardcore stuff with DDP.
Right. Yeah.
And like, it would have been cool to see him kind of broaden his horizons a little bit with his in-ring style. And it would have been cool to see him do a ladder match. Like the visuals you were talking about with him doing some of his moves off the top of a ladder would have been great. But yeah, so yeah, we agree on this. I'm actually excited to talk about my main event. It's your, technically it's your turn because
yes. But if you want to do your main event, first, you're more than welcome to.
Now I want you to go first because I think it would be absolutely crazy if we had the same idea, because my idea is so out of left field that I would be shocked, but it is logical. Okay. So go ahead.
Okay, I don't think it is, because you've already used the guy I'm using, and unless you double use them.
Okay, well there you go.
So I have the WWF World Heavyweight Title, Yokozuna champion with Mr. Fuji and Jim Cornette, and he's going to defend against Roddy Piper. So Piper was a guest referee, as we mentioned, for the Yoko versus Bret match on this card. And Roddy Piper, I think, is the MVP of our rebooks. We always seem to bring him back out of the mothballs to work a match or do something.
Yeah.
Goes.
I think I used this match at WrestleMania 9, if I'm not mistaken, on our rebook of that.
You might have. You know what? I didn't go back and look. I didn't want to taint any of the ideas I had by seeing what we had maybe done in the past.
Yeah, you didn't use it. I think I did.
No, I know I didn't use it. So, again, the history thing. Piper was in the main event of the first WrestleMania, and the only guy who reasonably could repeat that here. You know, not Orndorff, not Hogan, not Mr. T. Mr. T versus Yokozuna would have been amazing, though. I would have watched that. So, you know, you have that history connection. What I would do is I would make Piper the surprise 30th entry in the Rumble, have him win my last eliminating crush. You then get great promos from Piper about how he was never WWF champion, how he was in the biggest main event of the biggest WrestleMania, and how he's doing it again here. I would love to hear Cornette cut promos back on Piper, you know, him being a has-been windbag. I think the match would be short. I will let Piper look decent, but he eats a bonsai drop in the end. You know, as much as it would probably have been a huge pop to have Piper win and become champ for even a day if he loses it on Raw the next day. I don't think you can do that here. So I would let so then, as Yokozuna continues to be a Piper post-match, I would have Bret Hart run out for the save. So you're teasing a WrestleMania 9 repeat. Like, you have Piper telling Bret, go. And Bret says, no. Bret says, no. He said, I waited a year to get back at Yokozuna, and I can wait a little bit longer. I'm going to wait.
Subtle dig at Hogan.
A subtle dig at Hogan, because he's not there. Screw him. And he's going to say, I can wait, and I'm going to wait until King of the Ring. And that's your King of the Ring main event, and you're using your end of WrestleMania to hype your next big pay-per-view.
I like that. It would have been, yeah. I mean, obviously, I used that match at WrestleMania 9, So I think it would have been cool to use Piper here in a high profile spot like this. I think this was like him heavily into his movie career.
Yes, I'm not sure what he would have been. He would have been doing a lot of director movies by this point. This was what, 94? So this would be around the time of, I think, Jungle Ground, and which is actually a really good movie. If you haven't seen it, it's probably the best of Piper's direct to video 90s stuff. But it would have been around that time frame, I think.
Yeah. But yeah, I like this idea, and you could. I think it would be a good idea to have Yoko win and kind of keep his streak going, and kind of tease Bret Hart still kind of taking the crown at some point. So my main event, which
I'm excited. I can't imagine what it is. Now I guess Yoko's in it, but I don't know.
Yoko's in it, and you know what? I don't know if you'll like this or not, but there's logic to it. And this card initially
is it Doink the Clown? Is it Yoko versus Doink?
It is not.
Okay.
Initially, this card was hard for me to put together because I couldn't find a kind of through like an arc. I couldn't find a way for everything to kind of click together. And then the more research I did, once I hit on this match, it just made so much sense to me, and it would have rewritten history in a way that I think would have made things happier. So this is a WWF Championship lumberjack match. So that's never happened at a WrestleMania, certainly. But why do I have this? Because at the end of the Bret Yoko match, you have everybody come out and cheer Bret for winning. Right. And it's this big moment, and it kind of looks weird in that card because it's not like that happened any time before that. So
okay, I just had an idea what it might be, but keep going.
So if you have the lumberjacks around the ring, it would make that moment more logical. So it is Yokozuna versus Earthquake. So
not what I thought you were going to go for.
No. Here's the logic here. In January, these two had a feud. They had a sumo match on Raw.
Oh, I vaguely remember that being a thing now, yes.
Earthquake won that sumo match. So, by the way, in case you weren't aware, John Tenta, in his previous life, was a sumo champion. And, one of the guys at WrestleMania 7, Katao, I think his name was, they got into it in Japan. John Tenta was a tough dude. So I think based on that, you could have this be the feud for WrestleMania. And after WrestleMania 10, Earthquake squashed Atom Bomb in like a minute at this event. Like they were still having Earthquake squash guys. So it would have been great. This is a guy who was main eventing with Hulk Hogan. Like, he's in prominent spots. He killed.
Yeah, main evented SummerSlam. Was it SummerSlam 90?
Yeah, that sounds right.
Yeah.
He killed Damien. Like, this is a guy that was in high-profile spots. And after WrestleMania 10, he left the company, and he had financial troubles, and he would end up in WCW as, horrible characters.
The Shark. Yeah.
Right. So it would have been cool to see him have a moment here. And the logic to me is sound. You have what better way to beat this big unstoppable person from Japan than have another big unstoppable person come and confront him and beat him for the title. You have everybody there. However, there is a hook here that leads to something down the road.
Okay.
You have the lumberjacks around ringside. Yokozuna is ready to put the final kill in, the bonsai drop.
Yep.
The lights go out. The gong hits. You have the Undertaker at ringside as a lumberjack, and he interferes enough to get Earthquake to win. Maybe he doesn't even get physically involved. Maybe he just appears, and it scares Yokozuna enough that Earthquake can get the upper hand. So
you're putting the belt on Earthquake.
I am. Hey, I know. Like your face says it all. Like it's but
it's wrong.
All the logic there. You can't deny all the logic in that storyline.
I don't deny all the logic. I deny the ability to make money.
Okay. Well, he was, what was he? He was a member of the Natural Disasters, and I don't think he could have been positioned in a way to be an underdog to a bigger, heavier Yokozuna, but still a threat.
Yes, I'm still thinking about, like, today. I would love to hear like the Bruce Pritchard podcast where Conrad asks him about, so why did you guys go with Earthquake at WrestleMania 10? And hear Bruce try to explain it. Like, that's what I'm hearing in my head right now.
Hey, I'm just going off that sumo match.
Right. Now you mentioned Taker was a lumberjack. Any other specific lumberjacks, or just whoever's there?
You can have a mix of heels and faces there.
Yeah.
But yeah,
it doesn't matter. I think there would probably be part of the gag would be like the guys going out of the ring and they can't because Earthquake and Yokozuna are too big,
right?
So they can't get them back in. They just can't.
Yeah, it would be an interesting match to watch, and maybe you have the Shockmaster make an appearance from WCW. What do you think?
You
Former teammate.
Former teammate coming out. He trips and falls all the way down the aisle. Rolls like a barrel.
What's his face from the Greatest Royal Rumble?
Oh, that was Titus O'Neil.
Yeah. Anyway.
Yes.
I'm holding to my idea, Leonard. Earthquake, WrestleMania 10 champ.
I'm going to give you the award for the most creative main event booking for any rebook that we've done.
Yeah.
The most outside of the box booking.
It would have been so cool to see like a guy that had proven that he was a main event commodity, and that his storylines were interesting. It would have been cool to give him a moment like this and save him from kind of fading into obscurity as the Shark and then eventually returning as Golga. Like, this is a guy that
I forgot all about Golga because he was on our match.
So out of left field, bizarre, but can you imagine how much history would have changed if we looked back and they were trying to hoist Earthquake on their shoulders?
Yeah, to get the win. And then, what comes after that? I assume the Undertaker Yokozuna feud restarts. Who does Earthquake fight with? Crush?
Well, you can have him fight with Bret Hart.
Yeah. Well, yeah. It would be face versus face, or Earthquake could slowly turn.
Yeah, you could have him turn back and be a heel.
They can have a flag match where they both have the Canadian flag.
Yeah. Nobody will buy that King of the Ring pay-per-view.
Yeah. It's a Canadian flag match.
Yeah, you could have this be a flag lumberjack match.
Yes.
Japanese and the Canadian flag in the ring.
Yeah.
In Madison Square Garden.
That would be so over. That's a license to print money.
Yes. And people will be like, why is it? What did in Mid-South, I think Bill Watts did, like, what was it, like a loser leaves town tuxedo lumberjack match or something like that? Jim Ross talked about at one point.
Something. I'd have to look up. It was like every gimmick you could think of, together.
You could have that happen here. Lumberjack flag tuxedo match for the WWF title.
Yeah.
Earthquake.
Close the biggest anniversary WrestleMania up to that point.
That doesn't involve Madison Square Garden in any way whatsoever. But it's
there. It's just there. Genius. I will say that I thought about using Yoko versus Ramon at one point here.
Oh yeah.
And then I shifted him to Diesel, and I forgot that you used Backlund. But for one moment, I thought you were going to do Yokozuna versus Backlund.
Yeah. See, like I said, I'll be honest. I actually amended my Piper's Pit to include Backlund when you mentioned your match.
Oh.
And I was like, yeah, Backlund's there. Like, what can I use him in? Why not use him in the Piper's Pit segment with Hogan?
Come out for no reason. Just Backlund, Bob Backlund. Well, there you go.
Well, hey, if you guys out there think that we should not have rebooked this event, let us know why. If you like some of these other matches, other than the obvious, let us know why you like those matches. And please, we would love to hear your thoughts. I definitely think that this event was good for a rebook, and this was a fun one. And let's start a campaign. Earthquake should have been champion at WrestleMania 10.
Mm-hmm.
Right,
we'll get shirts and hashtags going.
That's hey. Absolutely. I would
Now-
love to
now-
have a John Tenta shirt. Well, yes, like I said, check us out on Apple Podcasts and or Spotify. If you'd rather listen to us, please hit the like button on our YouTube video and subscribe to our channel. Check out our past episodes. We have a lot of fun here. Please let us know if there's any ideas that you liked or disliked. And for Leonard, my name is Chad, and Alexa will see you out.